Chapter 1. The Mysterious Invitation, Section 1. A letter from the past. Late one evening, just as the mist rolled in from the river, Charlotte Ellis, a young and curious archaeologist, sat in her apartment in London. She had just returned from a long day at the museum, her hands covered in dust from ancient artifacts that barely whispered of their past. She was sorting through a pile of letters when one caught her eye. The envelope was aged and yellowed, with no return address. Only a single word was written in bold, elegant handwriting. Urgent. Intrigued, Charlotte tore it open. The letter was brief but unsettling. Dear Miss Ellis, your expertise is urgently needed. An excavation site in the depths of Egypt has uncovered an artifact of great importance. It has a history of unsettling occurrences, and the team is in dire need of a historian with your knowledge. You are the only one who can unravel its mystery. Sincerely, Dr. Victor Carrington. The letter felt like a summons, one that Charlotte couldn't ignore. Egypt. A mysterious artifact. Her heart pounded with excitement and trepidation. She knew this was the opportunity she had been waiting for. But deep down, she felt the weight of something more, something dangerous. Section 2. A Journey to the Unknown. 2 weeks later, Charlotte found herself on a flight over the vast Sahara Desert. The heat outside was unbearable, and the landscape below looked like a desolate, endless sea of sand. Yet, Charlotte was eager. She knew that what lay ahead was far more than an ordinary excavation. As the plane descended into the small, dusty airport near the site, a tall, mysterious figure stepped forward. Dr. Victor Carrington, the man behind the letter, was waiting for her. His sharp blue eyes and commanding presence instantly struck Charlotte as both intriguing and unsettling. Miss Ellis. Dr. Carrington greeted her, his voice low and deliberate. I am glad you accepted my invitation. The situation here is delicate. There are things in the sands of Egypt that were never meant to be uncovered. His words sent a shiver down Charlotte's spine, but she held her ground. She had been to many digs before, but this one felt different. Dr. Carrington led her to a nearby jeep, and they drove through the barren desert, the air heavy with an unspoken tension. As they neared the excavation site, Charlotte noticed the ominous presence of several guards, standing at attention as if watching for something or someone. When they reached the site, Charlotte was immediately struck by the size of the excavation. It wasn't just any dig. This was an ancient temple, half buried in the sands, its walls adorned with cryptic symbols that seemed to shift in the fading light. This is where it all began, Carrington said quietly. The artifact we uncovered is unlike anything we've ever seen. But there's something wrong with it. Charlotte turned to him, her curiosity piqued. What do you mean, wrong? He hesitated. His eyes darkened. The moment we uncovered the artifact, strange things started happening. The workers began to fall ill, and those who stayed too long began to experience nightmares. We believe it is cursed. Section 3. The Artifact. As they entered the tent that housed the artifact, Charlotte's heart raced. On a pedestal in the center of the room lay an object covered in a fine cloth. Carrington carefully removed it, revealing a bronze amulet etched with intricate markings. At first glance, it appeared to be a simple ancient, but as Charlotte studied it closer, she felt an unease relic settled over her. The amulet was alive with energy, its surface shimmering faintly under the light. The symbols were like nothing Charlotte had ever seen before, alien, ancient, yet eerily familiar. Carrington noticed her reaction and spoke softly. The local villagers believe this to be a relic of a long-forgotten god. They call it the Eye of Amun, and they say that holders it will possess the power to control time itself. Charlotte frowned. Time itself? That sounds impossible. Dr. Carrington's expression was grave. I thought so too. But the occurrences here cannot be dismissed. And recently, one of the workers disappeared, leaving behind only a trail of strange markings leading deeper into the desert. We need to know what this artifact really is. Charlotte looked at the amulet again, her fingers itching to touch it, but something inside her urged her to hold back. There was something dangerous about it, something that pulled at her, beckoning her toward a deeper mystery. Chapter 2. The First Clue, Section 1. A worker's disappearance. The next day, Charlotte joined the excavation team. The atmosphere at the site was tense. The workers, a mix of locals and experienced archaeologists, were going about their tasks with a sense of urgency. But there was an underlying fear in the air. Charlotte overhears a conversation between two workers. The curse is real, one whispered. People who are too close to the amulet, they vanish, like Khalil. The other worker, a man named Omar, shook his head. Nonsense. It's just superstition. But his voice trembled, and his eyes darted nervously around the camp. Charlotte could feel the anxiety building, and a deep dread began to settle in her stomach. Later that afternoon, Charlotte was walking along the excavation site when she noticed something strange, a series of deep, unusual footprints, almost as if someone had been dragged along the ground. The footprints led to a narrow passage between two large stone pillars, one of which had been recently revealed. With her heart pounding, Charlotte decided to follow the trail. The passage leads her to a small, hidden chamber. As she entered, she found herself staring at a stone wall covered in ancient hieroglyphs, and in the center of the wall was a symbol the same as the one on the amulet. Before she could investigate further, a voice behind her made her spin around. Miss Ellis, what are you doing here? It was Dr. Carrington, his face pale, his eyes filled with concern. Section 2. The Dark Secrets. You shouldn't be here, he said urgently, walking towards her. This part of the site is off limits. Charlotte raised an eyebrow. Why? What's really going on here, Dr. Carrington? He sobbed deeply, his shoulders slumping. There's more to this than I'm telling you. The amulet isn't just an artifact. It's part of something far more dangerous. And the workers who have disappeared, they've been taken by something ancient. Charlotte felt a chill run down her spine. Taken by what? Carrington's eyes darkened. By the spirits of the temple. The curse is real. And I'm afraid we're all at risk. I brought you here because you're the only one who can help us solve this mystery. But you must be careful. Charlotte, the deeper you dig, the more dangerous it becomes. Section 3. A Fateful Decision. Charlotte knew that she had crossed a line. The mystery was too great. and the stakes were too high. But she couldn't turn back now. The answers were within her grasp, and she was determined to uncover them no matter the cost. She turned to Dr. Carrington. "We need to find the missing workers. I'll help you. But I need your full trust." He hesitated before nodding. "I trust you, but be warned. What lies ahead will challenge everything you believe. There's more at stake here than just the amulet." And so, with a single decision, Charlotte stepped into the heart of the mystery. The amulet, the disappearance of the workers, and the strange events surrounding the excavation were all connected. But as she soon discovered, the greatest mystery of all was yet to be revealed, and it would take her to the very edge of time itself. Chapter 3. Into the Depths. Section 1. The Search for the Missing Workers. The days that followed Charlotte's discovery in the hidden chamber were a blur of tension and urgency. Dr. Carrington kept a tight grip on the excavation, but he no longer seemed confident the archaeologist Charlotte had first met. Now, his face was drawn with concern, his every movement betraying a sense of paranoia. Charlotte found herself in a new role, one she hadn't expected, leading the search for the missing workers. The footprints had led her to a narrow corridor that disappeared deep into the earth. And from there, it was a race against time. The excavation team had been divided into smaller groups, but so far, none of them had returned with any meaningful answers. Each time they ventured deeper into the site, the sense of unease grew. Workers would disappear without a trace, and then others would report seeing shadowy figures in the tunnels, figures that didn't belong. Charlotte's heart sank as she and Carrington reached a small outpost near the edge of the excavation. The men here were weary, their faces marked with exhaustion and fear. "Have you seen anything?" Charlotte asked one of the workers, a young man named Farid, who had been with the team from the start. He wiped his brow with the back of his hand. "Nothing. We find some tunnels leading deeper into the ground. But every time we get closer to the source, things happen. People hear things, see things that don't make sense. It's like the air itself is charged with something. And I don't know if I can keep going down there." Miss Ellis. Charlotte understood. The fear in his eyes mirrored what she had seen in others. The amulet, whatever it was, seemed to infect not just the minds of those around it, but the very place it lay. There was something malignant at the heart of this excavation. Section 2. A dark discovery. As Charlotte pondered the missing workers, a sudden scream echoed from the entrance of one of the deeper caves. She rushed to the scene, her heart pounding. Farid and several other workers had gathered around, staring at something with wide, afraid eyes. At the center of the group, a man lay on the ground, unconscious but alive. It was Khalil, one of the workers who had gone missing days earlier. His face was pale, his clothes torn, and his eyes were wide open in terror. But there was no recognition in his gaze. "What happened to him?" Charlotte asked, kneeling beside him. He wasn't like this when we found him," Farid said, voice shaking. "He was just standing there, staring at the wall, muttering something about eyes, and the sand's calling him." Charlotte's mind racing. The eye. Khalil must have encountered the same force. The workers had been warned about the same influence she had been feeling. But this was no ordinary hallucination. Something in Khalil had been changed, and it seemed like the deeper they dug, the more dangerous things became. "Director." Carrington knelt down beside Khalil, his face grim. The eye's power is starting to reach its peak. We're at the precipice of something we can't control. Section 3. The ritual begins with Khalil unconscious. The team gathered in the main camp, the tension thick in the air. Charlotte and Carrington sit together, debating their next move. The deeper we go, the more dangerous it becomes, Charlotte said, her voice low. It's not just the workers. Something about the site itself is causing disturbances. I've seen it in the hieroglyphs, in the designs of the stone walls. This is no ordinary tomb. Carrington nodded slowly. It's a temple. A temple built to worship the ancient forces of time and fate. The eye, it's a key. Yes, but not just to knowledge. It's a key to unlocking the very fabric of existence. Charlotte stood up suddenly, her eyes narrowing. You knew. You knew all along what this was, didn't you? Carrington's eyes darkened. I knew this was not just a treasure hunt, but I didn't fully understand what the eye could do until we uncovered it. It calls to people. Charlotte. It drives them to seek it out, to control it. And once you touch it, once you release its power, the veil between worlds begins to thin. A sudden realization hits Charlotte. The veil. That's why the workers are disappearing. They're being pulled into something, a place between worlds. Carrington's face twisted with remorse. Exactly. And the only way to stop it is to perform the ancient ritual, the one the priests of Amun used to bind the eye's power. But I'm afraid it may be too late. Section 4. The descent into madness. Charlotte knew they had to act quickly. She couldn't let the power of the eye reach its peak. The veil was already weakening. She and Carrington, along with a small group of workers, prepared to descend into the deepest part of the excavation site. The amulet, the artifact that had caused all this chaos, lay at the heart of it all. As they made their way deeper into the caverns, the air grew colder. The shadows stretched unnaturally long. The walls around them seemed to pulse, vibrating with an energy that had no source. And in the distance, faint whispers could be heard, indistinct voices, as if the very air was alive with the voices of those who had come before them. Then, as they rounded a corner, they found themselves in a vast chamber, one that looked far older than anything they had seen before. At the center, bathed in the dim light of their lanterns, was a stone altar, and upon it lay the eye of Amun, glowing with an unnatural light. But it wasn't just the eye that caught Charlotte's attention. Surrounding it were the workers, or what was left of them. They were standing in a circle, their eyes blank, as if in a trance. Khalil was among them, now standing motionless, his gaze fixed on the amulet. The ritual has begun, Carrington whispered. They've all been drawn in. They're no longer themselves. Amelia's heart raced. She had to stop this. She didn't know how, but she had to stop the ritual before the eye's influence consumed them all. Section 5. Breaking the cycle. As Charlotte moved toward the altar, the air around her thickened, as if something was trying to hold her back. The workers, now fully in a trance, began to chant, their voices rising in eerie unity. Charlotte's mind raced as she tried to piece together what she had learned. The ritual needed to be broken, the link between the eye and the workers severed. She had to destroy it, destroy the source of its power. In the center of the room, she saw it, a stone lever, hidden beneath the altar. She knew what she had to do. It was the only way to stop the madness from spreading. Carrington reached out to stop her. No, you can't destroy it. Charlotte, if you do, everything we've worked for will be lost. Charlotte turned to him, her voice fierce. This isn't about work anymore. Carrington, this is about stopping something far worse than any treasure. It's the only way. With a surge of determination, she pulled the lever. A loud crash echoed through the chamber as the altar shifted, the eyes glow dimming. The workers screamed in agony as the power that had entranced them was ripped away. The chamber shook violently. The walls cracked as the very foundation of the temple began to collapse. Charlotte knew they didn't have much time. She turned to Carrington. We need to leave. Now. As they fled, the cave behind them crumbled. The eye and its influence finally sealed away. The workers, freed from the trance, slowly came to their senses, disoriented but alive. Chapter 4. The Legacy of the Eye, Section 1. The Aftermath. Charlotte and Carrington returned to the excavation site, their faces pale with the knowledge of what had just transpired. The danger had passed, but the cost had been high. The workers had been saved, but the truth of what the eye represents will forever haunt them. Carrington's face was drawn, and for the first time, Charlotte saw the weight of the man's guilt. We were never meant to uncover it, he said softly. The eye was never meant to be seen. Charlotte nodded, her heart heavy with understanding. The eye had been a force beyond comprehension, one that should never have been awakened. But the mystery was not over. As she lifted back at the crumbling ruins, Charlotte realized that the legacy of the eye will always remain a warning, a reminder that some things were better left untouched. Chapter 5. The Shadow of the Eye. Section 1. A New Discovery. In the weeks following the destruction of the Eye of Amun, Charlotte tried to put the past behind her. The excavation site was abandoned, and the workers who had once been ensnared by its power had been sent home, recovering from the trauma of the events. The world, it seemed, was returning to normal. But Charlotte couldn't shake the feeling that the destruction of the eye had only been the beginning. The power it held, the influence it had over time and reality itself, was not something that could simply be erased. There had to be more. And then, just as she was beginning to feel a sense of closure, another letter arrived. Unlike the others, this one came without warning, and it wasn't delivered by courier. It simply appeared on her desk one morning, lying there as if it had always been waiting for her. It was a plain, unmarked envelope. She opened it cautiously, knowing already that it was not just any letter. Inside was a single page, bearing only a few words. The eye's power never truly fades. It only waits. The cycle has not ended. Come to Egyptus, and you will find what you've missed. It was signed simply, The Keeper. Charlotte felt a chill run down her spine. Egyptus. The name was familiar, but it held no immediate connection in her mind. Yet the warning was clear. There was something more to the eye than she had realized, and she was drawn back into its shadow. Section 2. A call to action. Charlotte knew she couldn't ignore the letter. The eye had already caused enough devastation, and she wasn't about to let its remnants continue to disrupt the world. The keeper's message was a summons, a warning, and a challenge. The cycle was far from over, but as she prepared to leave for Egyptus, she found herself contemplating the nature of the force she had been dealing with. The eye had been a physical object. Yes, but it had also been something far deeper, a presence, an influence, something that couldn't be confined to a simple artifact. If the keeper's words were true, then the eye's power was not bound by time or space. It was eternal, lurking in the shadows, waiting to return. Charlotte felt the weight of this revelation, knowing she couldn't face it alone. She needed help, and there was only one person who could guide her through the depths of the ancient knowledge that had been revealed: Dr. Victor Carrington. Despite their past differences, she knew that Carrington had been just as deeply involved in the discovery of the eye as she had. His expertise would be crucial in understanding what was truly at stake. She reached out to him, and after a brief but urgent conversation, he agreed to meet her. Section 3. The road to Egyptus. Charlotte and Carrington set out for Egyptus the following weeks, a mysterious city in the heart of Egypt. Egyptus has long been the subject of speculation among scholars and archaeologists. It was believed to be the final resting place of an ancient civilization that had disappeared without a trace, and it was said to hold secrets that could change the course of history. The journey was arduous, with days of traveling across the unforgiving desert and nights spent under the starry sky. But both Charlotte and Carrington felt a growing sense of purpose. Whatever lay ahead, they knew they were on the verge of something monumental. They arrived at Egyptus in the early morning hours, the city hidden beneath layers of sand and time. Its ruins rose before them like the remains of a forgotten empire, bathed in the faint glow of the rising sun. The air was thick with the weight of history, and every step they took felt like a step into the past. As they made their way through the narrow streets, they encountered strange markings on the walls, symbols, and carvings that seemed to pulse with an eerie energy. Charlotte felt her pulse quicken. This was no ordinary place. The presence of the eye, and everything connected to it, was here, buried beneath the sands. Section 4. The Keeper's Warning. In the heart of Egyptus, they discovered an ancient temple, hidden beneath the rubble. Its entrance was marked with a single symbol, the same one Charlotte had seen on the eye, the same one that had haunted her dreams. "This is it," Carrington murmured, his voice filled with awe. "The heart of the mystery." They entered the temple cautiously, their footsteps echoing in the vast, silent space. The walls were lined with more hieroglyphs, but these were unlike any they had seen before. The symbols were intricate, interwoven, and seemed to shift as they looked at them. It was as if the language itself was alive. At the center of the temple, on a stone pedestal, lay an ancient tome. The cover was etched with the same symbol as the eye, and Charlotte knew instinctively that it was the key to unlocking the final part of the puzzle. But as she reached out to touch the book, a shadow moved in the corner of her vision. She spun around, heart racing, but saw nothing. And then a voice filled the air, a low, chilling whisper that seemed to come from everywhere. The cycle cannot be stopped. The eye has always been, and it will always be. You cannot escape your fate. Section 5. The Final Confrontation. The voice sent a shiver down Charlotte's spine, and she realized with a jolt that they were not alone. As she and Carrington stood frozen, the shadows in the temple seemed to come alive. Figures emerged from the darkness, their forms shifting. Not entirely human. They were the watchers, the guardians of the eye, the beings who had kept it hidden for centuries. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light, their presence both menacing and alluring. One of the watchers stepped forward, its voice a whisper in the dark. You seek to control what cannot be controlled. The eye is not meant to be destroyed, nor is it meant to be wielded. It is the cycle, and you are merely part of it. Charlotte's heart raced as she backed away. I won't let you do this, she said, her voice shaking with defiance. I will stop the eye, and I will end this cycle. The watcher's smile was cold, filled with centuries of knowledge and power. You cannot stop the eye. It is eternal. You are nothing but a fleeting moment in its endless existence. Charlotte knew she had no choice. She had to face the truth. The eye could not be destroyed, and it could not be controlled. But there was still one thing she could do: break the cycle. In a final, desperate move, Charlotte reached for the ancient tome and opened it. As the pages turned, the air around them began to crackle with energy. The watchers screamed, their forms flickering as the power of the eye was unleashed. With one final push, Charlotte releases the energy from the tome. The temple shook violently, the walls collapsing around them. The eye's power surged, and for a brief moment, the world seemed to pause. Then, everything went silent. Section 6. The End of the Cycle. When Charlotte opened her eyes, she found herself standing outside the temple, the ruins behind her now reduced to rubble. The eye's presence had faded, and the cycle that had bound her to it was finally broken. Carrington stood beside her, his face filled with a mixture of awe and disbelief. It's over, he whispered. The eye is gone. But as Charlotte looked out over the desert, she felt a deep emptiness. The eye was gone. But the knowledge it had imparted, the power it had wielded, would never truly fade. The cycle may have been broken, but the legacy of the eye will live on in the pages of history, in the ruins of Aegyptus, and in the depths of their souls. Charlotte had won, but the cost had been high. The game had ended, but its shadow will follow her forever. Chapter 6. The Return of the Watchers, Section 1. The Aftermath. The collapse of the ancient temple marks the end of one chapter. But for Charlotte, it was only the beginning of a new, more unsettling reality. As the dust settled and the ruins of Aegyptus lay still behind her, Charlotte stood at the edge of the desert, staring out into the vast emptiness. The eye, the force that had haunted her every step, was gone. The cycle had been broken, or so she thought. Doctor, Carrington stood beside her, his gaze distant. It's over, Charlotte, he murmured. We've done it. The eye's power is gone, and the world is safe. Charlotte didn't reply immediately. The emptiness in her chest was too heavy to ignore. She had been through so much to destroy the eye. But now, a sense of dread lingered. It was as if someone was still watching, waiting. "Is it really over?" Charlotte finally asked, her voice betraying a tinge of uncertainty. Carrington gave her a reassuring glance. "Yes, it is. The Watchers were just guardians of the cycle. With the eye destroyed, they no longer have purpose." Charlotte turned to face him, but there was a shadow in her eyes. "But what if the cycle isn't truly broken? What if the eye? What if it never truly dies?" Before Carrington could answer, a strange, unsettling sound filled the air like the whisper of wind, but with a more chilling undertone. The ground beneath their feet trembled, and the air grew heaviest. Suddenly, Charlotte felt the unmistakable sensation of eyes upon her watching, assessing. The same feeling she had experienced before. The same overwhelming presence of something ancient, something powerful. Section 2. The Watchers Return. The wind began to whip around them, and the once still sands of the desert began to move, as if alive. Dark shadows loomed in the distance, and Charlotte's heart pounded in her chest. There was no mistaking it. Now the Watchers were back. Carrington's face paled. "They can't be here. They're not supposed to exist anymore." Charlotte's hands shook as she gripped her notebook, where she had chronicled everything they had learned about the Eye and the Watchers. The journal that had once held the secrets of the ancient civilization now feels like a weight in her hands. She had thought that destroying the Eye would put an end to everything, but she was wrong. The air grew dense, charged with an unnatural energy. Dark figures began to materialize before them, emerging from the shifting sands. They were the Watchers, but they were different now. Darker, more imposing. Their forms flickering between existence and non-existence. "We are eternal," a voice boomed, echoing through the air like thunder. "The cycle can never be broken, for we are its keepers. The Eye may have been destroyed, but the power it contains lives within us. You are merely pawns in the game, and the game has only just begun." Charlotte's breath caught in her throat. The Watchers were not just guardians of the Eye, they were its essence. The destruction of the artifact had only awakened their true purpose. "We do not end," the voice continued. "We are the ones who shape fate. You will never be free of us." Section 3. The Final Test. Charlotte's mind racing. She had thought the Eye was the ultimate force, but the Watchers were far older, far more powerful than she had ever imagined. If the Eye was just the beginning, what were they truly capable of? "We cannot destroy them," Charlotte said, her voice trembling with realization. "We thought the Eye was the key to everything, but it was only a tool. The Watchers were the true power." Dr. Carrington nodded grimly, his face filled with fear. "We were blinded by our obsession with the Eye. The Watchers are a force beyond anything we can comprehend. If they are truly eternal, then there is no stopping them." Charlotte took a deep breath, the weight of the situation settling heavily on her shoulders. She had thought she was done, but she now realized that the battle for the fate of the world was far from over. The Eye had been the catalyst, but the Watchers were the ones who controlled time and reality. If we can't destroy them, then what do we do? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The Watcher's leader stepped forward, his form shimmering like a mirage. You will serve us. Charlotte Ellis, you are part of the cycle now. You are one of us. The Eye has marked you, and you will carry its legacy for eternity. Charlotte's heart raced as the Watcher's words settled into her mind. The Eye had chosen her, but not for the reasons she thought. She wasn't the one who would destroy it. She was the one who would serve it. Section 4. The Choice of Fate. The desert was silent. The sand is still now, as if it too was waiting for Charlotte's decision. She had faced impossible odds before, but this was different. The Watchers were not just an obstacle to overcome. They were part of the very fabric of reality, and she had been caught in their game. Serve you. Charlotte's voice cracked with disbelief. I refuse. I won't become one of you. I'll never be a part of this cycle. The Watcher's leader tilted his head, his expression unreadable. You have no choice. Charlotte, the Eye has chosen you, and you will either serve it or be consumed by it. The game will continue, with or without you. Carrington stepped forward, his face set with determination. We've fought too long to give up now. There has to be another way. The Watcher's leader laughed, a sound that seemed to resonate in the very air around them. You are foolish to think you have any power here. Dr. Carrington, the Eye's power is beyond your comprehension. Charlotte clenched her fists, her mind racing. There had to be a way out of this. She had to break the cycle. She had already destroyed the Eye, but the Watchers were still here, still pulling the strings. Then, in the back of her mind, a thought surfaced, the tome, the journal they had found in the temple. The answers had been written there all along, hidden in the ancient texts. If she could unlock its true meaning, maybe she could break free of the Watcher's influence. Without a word, Charlotte reached into her bag and pulled out the journal. The Watcher's eyes flickered, sensing her intent, but they did nothing. As Charlotte flipped through the pages, she found the key, a passage that describes a way to break the cycle of the Eye and remove the Watcher's power once and for all. But it was risky. It would require a sacrifice, one that might cost her everything. Section 5. The final sacrifice. The air around Charlotte thickened, and the Watcher's power pressed in on her, their presence suffocating. But Charlotte knew what she had to do. She had to end it, once and for all. With trembling hands, she spoke the words from the journal, an incantation that would sever the connection between the Eye, the Watchers, and the world they controlled. The power surged through her, the very fabric of reality trembling as the ritual began. As the Watchers screamed in agony, their forms flickering and distorting, Charlotte felt her own body begin to change. The power was overwhelming, and she could feel it tearing at her soul. But she didn't stop. She couldn't. The world around her began to fracture. The Watchers' hold on reality weakened, their forms crumbling like dust in the wind. With one final forceful cry, Charlotte completed the incantations, and everything went black. Chapter 7. The Legacy of the Eye. Section 1. The calm. After the storm, Charlotte woke to an eerie stillness. The desert around her, untouched by the chaos of the previous night. She had succeeded in breaking the cycle, or so she thought. The eye was no more. The watchers had faded into nothingness, and the forces that had once ruled her life were gone. But something inside her feels different. The light of dawn bathed the sand in a soft golden glow, and the world seemed untouched by the dark energies that had once filled it. Charlotte rose to her feet slowly, her body feeling both lighter and heavier at the same time. She had felt the eyes pulling within her, and now that it was gone, she couldn't shake the feeling that a piece of herself had been lost, or perhaps freed. But as she looked across the barren landscape, she realized she was no longer the same person who had entered the labyrinth of Egyptus. The rituals, the sacrifices, the weight of the power she had testified, it had all left its mark on her. As she gathered her things and prepared to leave the site, her mind wandered back to the journal, the ancient tome she had used to undo the eye's influence. She thought about the words of the keeper, how they had warned her that the cycle never truly ended, that some forces were eternal, waiting for their chance to return. She shivered at the thought. The eye had been destroyed, but what about everything it had touched? Section 2. The Keeper's Message. As she made her way through the ruins, a familiar sensation crept into Charlotte's mind, the same feeling of being watched, of being known. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but undeniable. She had thought she was alone in the desert, but a sharp voice cut through the silence. "You did well, Miss Ellis." Charlotte froze, her heart leaping into her throat. She turned around, and there he stood, the keeper, a figure cloaked in shadow, his features indistinct. He was tall, his face hidden beneath a dark hood, and yet his presence was powerful, oppressive. "How did you—" Charlotte started, her voice betraying the fear she felt. The keeper raised a gloved hand. "It was inevitable, Charlotte. The eye has always been connected to the fabric of time. Destroying it was merely a part of the greater scheme. You may have ended one chapter, but the story of the Eye of the Watchers is far from over." Charlotte's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean I destroyed the eye? It's gone. The Watchers are gone." The keeper smiled, but it was a cold, unsettling expression. "You were right in your actions, but you were wrong in thinking that the eye was just a tool. It was more than that. It was a conduit, a link between the past, the present, and the future. And even now, remnants of its power linger. The Watchers may be gone, but their influence endures. You were never meant to destroy it, Charlotte. You were meant to guard it." Section 3. The Eye's Legacy. Charlotte's mind whirled. "Guard it? What do you mean by that?" she asked, her voice rising in frustration. The keeper's figure seemed to grow darker as he stepped closer. "You have been chosen, Charlotte Ellis. The eye will never truly die. Its essence is eternal, and those who have touched it carry its power within them. But the power of the eye is not merely to control. It is meant to guide, to shape the future. You are one of its new guardians." Charlotte took a step back, the weight of his words sinking in. "I don't want to be part of this anymore. I've already done enough damage." The keeper's voice softened, though his presence remains overpowering. You misunderstand. You have the power to change the world, to shape the future. But with that power comes a responsibility. The cycle will return. And when it does, the eye will need someone to wield its power, someone with the strength to carry its burden. Charlotte shook her head. I've broken the cycle. I won't be part of it. You don't have a choice. The keeper's voice became cold. You are already part of it, whether you accept it or not. You've tasted the power of the eye, and now you must choose how you will wield it. Section 4. The decision. Charlotte stood still, her mind racing. The keeper's words echoed in her mind, and for a moment she thought she could hear the faintest whisper of the eye, calling to her, beckoning her to return. But she fought the urge, closing her eyes and steadying her breath. I'm not going back to that life, she said firmly, shaking her head. I destroyed the eye. I broke the cycle. I won't be a part of it. The keeper's figure flickered, as though his form was dissolving into the air. You misunderstand, Charlotte. The game is never over. It was never about controlling the eye. It was about understanding it, embracing the power it offers. Charlotte's heart pounded in her chest as she felt the weight of his words pressing down on her. She had thought the cycle was over, but now she understood the eye's power wasn't just about destruction. It was about legacy, about shaping the world through time and influence. You will return, the keeper said, his voice growing distant. When the time is right. Section 5. The burden of knowledge. With the keeper's words still hanging in the air, Charlotte found herself alone in the desert once more. But this time, things feel different. The sands around her felt endless, as though they held the weight of centuries of history, of forgotten empires, of unspoken truths. The eye was gone, but its legacy remained. And with that legacy, Charlotte now carries a burden, one that she couldn't escape, no matter how hard she tried. As she walked away from the ruins of Egyptus, Charlotte understood that her journey was far from over. The eye may have been destroyed, but its influence will never leave her. She had been marked, chosen as one of the guardians of an ancient power that transcended time itself. The game was not over. It had only just begun, and Charlotte was part of it. Chapter 8. The Eye Reawakens, Section 1. The Return to the Sands. The days following Victor Carrington's visit passed in a blur for Charlotte. She had long since tried to put the events of Egyptus behind her. Yet, the weight of the eye's legacy refuses to leave her. She had thought she could live a normal life, surrounded by the comfort of academic papers and museum exhibits. But as the days wore on, the presence of the eye seemed to grow stronger in her thoughts. Carrington had not returned to her since that day, but now, with his urgent message, Charlotte knows that whatever had started all those years ago in the depths of Egypt was not finished. The knock on her door had been the first sign. The second sign came when she stumbled across an old map in her research, a map that marked another ancient temple, not far from where they had been in Egyptus. But this temple wasn't part of any records. It was hidden beneath layers of shifting sand, a place untouched by modern eyes. The map had been marked with a symbol, one she had seen before. It was the symbol of the eye. As she studied it, the words from Carrington echoed in her mind. It's happening again. The eye's influence is spreading. Section 2. The abyss beckons, determined to confront the growing influence of the eye once again. Charlotte packed her bags and called Carrington. "I'm coming to Egypt," she said, her voice steady, but laced with the same fear she had once felt. The flight was long, the journey even more exhausting. The familiar sight of the desert stretched endlessly before her as the plane touched down near the excavation site. The sands seemed to whisper secrets that Charlotte wasn't sure she was ready to hear. At the excavation site, Carrington greeted her with the same grim expression. The team was already preparing to dig deeper, but their progress had been slow. Something or someone was blocking their way. "It's like the land itself is resisting us," Carrington confessed. "Every time we try to move forward, there's resistance. We're digging, but the answers elude us." Charlotte studied him carefully, her eyes narrowing. The eye's influence, it's not just in the artifact. It's embedded in the land. The eye chose Egypt, not just as a home, but as a binding force. We're not just uncovering an artifact, we're breaking open something far darker. Carrington's face tightened. "I think we've made a mistake by continuing this, but I couldn't stop. The temptation, the knowledge." Charlotte sobbed. "We're not here for the artifact, Victor. We're here to stop the eye's power from growing any further." They made their way toward the temple, where the map had led them. It was buried deep beneath the earth, far below the surface. The entry was small, hidden beneath a pile of ancient stones. But as they cleared the rubble, a deep sense of foreboding overtook Charlotte. "This is it," she said quietly, "the eye's final resting place." The air grew heaviest as they descended further into the darkness. The walls of the temple glowed faintly, etched with symbols that seemed to pulse with a dark energy, almost alive. As they ventured deeper into the heart of the temple, Charlotte could hear the faint sound of whispers, voices that weren't her own. Section 3. The Heart of the Temple. At the heart of the temple, Charlotte found the amulet. It was more magnificent than she had remembered, though its glow was duller than before, as if it were waiting for something. The dark symbols carved into the walls surrounding it were familiar, like the veins of a living organism. The power in the air felt suffocating, as though it was drawing her in. "Do you feel that?" Carrington asked. His voice strained him. "Yes," Charlotte said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's not just the amulet. The land is infected by it. The eye's power is here, in the temple, in the walls. It's pulling us in. We have to destroy it." But as she stepped closer to the pedestal, something shifted in the air, a presence, ancient and ominous, filled the chamber. The shadows grew deeper, and the air itself became thick with energy. The amulet pulsed, and Charlotte could feel her fingers twitching toward it. The temptation was irresistible. She could feel the power surging through her, urging her to take control, to wield it as her own. "You cannot destroy what is eternal." A voice boomed from the darkness. "The eye cannot be unmade, for it is beyond time. You are part of the cycle now. Charlotte Ellis, you always were." Section 4. The Guardian's Revelation. A figure emerging from the shadows, tall and cloaked in darkness, his eyes glowing with a faint, ominous light. It was a watcher, but different from the ones Charlotte had faced before. This one had no human form, no face, only a shifting darkness that twisted and writhed. The eye is not just an artifact. Charlotte, it is a gateway, a doorway to a realm beyond time. And now it calls you, the Watcher said, its voice a mixture of many others, as though countless souls spoke through it. Charlotte stood frozen. The Watchers had been guardians of the eye, but this one was different. It wasn't just to the force of nature. It was an ancient being, guardian that had existed long before the eye. You are no longer merely a witness to the eye, the Watcher continued. You are its heir. The power that it once held is yours to command, so you choose to embrace it. But first, you must understand the truth. Charlotte felt the weight of the words press against her chest. The eye had always been more than just an object. It had been the key to unlocking a greater force. And now, she was part of it. The Watcher's eyes, if they could be called eyes, locked onto her. The power you sought to destroy was only the beginning. You are destined to control it, or to be destroyed by it. There is no middle ground, Charlotte's mind racing. The burden of the eye's power was now hers to bear. But could she truly wield it? Could she stop the cycle? Or was she bound to repeat it forever? Section 5. The final choice. Charlotte looked at Carrington, who was standing motionless, his face pale. He had seen what the eye could do, but this was beyond comprehension. The eye's power is not yours to control, Charlotte said firmly. I will not be your puppet. The Watcher's laughter filled the chamber, its voice echoing in the depths. You believe you can refuse it. You are already part of the cycle. You cannot escape it. Charlotte, with a surge of determination, Charlotte reached out for the amulet. The Watcher's form flickered in the air, as if the very reality around them was beginning to warp. I will destroy it, she said, even if it means sacrificing everything. As her fingers closed around the amulet, the temple shook violently, the walls crumbled, and the floor beneath them split apart. The amulet pulsed with a brilliant, blinding light, and Charlotte felt the ground give way beneath her. The Watcher's voice echoed one final time. You cannot destroy what is eternal. And then, everything went dark. Chapter 9. The Return of the Eye. Section 1. The Weight of Time. Charlotte's world had changed in ways she could not fully comprehend. The sands of Egypt stretched endlessly around her, yet she stood at the crossroads of time itself. She had faced the eye, fought the Watchers, and broken the cycle, but now a new and darker truth was emerging. The eye had not been destroyed. It had simply been dormant, waiting for its moment to return. The wind swept across the barren landscape, a bitter reminder of the power that still lingered in the world. Charlotte's heart pounded as she walked through the ruins of the ancient temple. The cracks in the earth where the eye had once pulsed with energy had reopened, and the air around her was thick with tension. The Watcher, the one that had returned to taunt her, had left behind more than just an eerie warning. It had left a mark on her soul, something that would never fade. As she reached the temple's entrance, Charlotte hesitated, her fingers trembling at the ancient stone. The world she had known, the life she had fought to protect, had been forever changed. And now, the eye, that dark force, was calling once again. Section 2. The Keeper's Return. Charlotte's mind raced as she stepped deeper into the ruins, the weight of history pressing down on her. She had returned to the site not out of choice, but necessity. The eye's power was not gone. It had simply waited for the right time, for the right person, to return to it. Her footsteps echoed through the desolate corridors of the temple, the darkness around her almost suffocating. She had thought that by destroying the eye, she had severely severed its influence, but the truth was far darker. She had only sealed it, locked it away, and now the time had come for it to rise again. And then, just as she reached the center of the temple, a shadow shifted in the corner of her eye. The figure of the keeper emerges from the darkness. His eyes glowed with an unearthly light, and his presence seemed to command the very air around them. "Charlotte," the keeper said, his voice cold, yet strangely calm. "You think you've ended it, but you've only postponed the inevitable. The eye is eternal, and its power will always find a way back." Charlotte's heart sank. "You lied to me," she whispered, her voice trembling. "The eye wasn't meant to be destroyed. It was meant to be used." The keeper stepped closer, his presence like a heavy weight pressing against her chest. "The eye is not a tool to be wielded. It is the source of all things of power, of fate, of time itself. You can no more destroy it than you can destroy the sun." "But I destroyed it," Charlotte said fiercely. "I ended the cycle. I broke the bond between it and the Watchers." The keeper's expression remains impassive. "You broke the physical bond, yes, but the eye's essence is far more complex. It exists beyond time, beyond space. And now, you will face the consequences." Section 3. The Awakening. Charlotte's breath caught in her throat as the ground beneath her feet began to tremble. The temple's walls cracked, and a strange light filled the room, emanating from the very earth itself. The eye had returned, or perhaps it had never truly left. The power that it held was starting to pulse through the ancient stone, ripping through the very fabric of reality. "You cannot fight it, Charlotte," the keeper said softly. "The eye has already claimed you. It will control you, just as it controls everything. It is the foundation of all things, and you will see that nothing can stand against it." The whispers grew louder, the voices of the Watchers rising from the depths of the temple, filling the air with a growing sense of dread. Charlotte closed her eyes, trying to block out the noise, but it was impossible. The power of the eye was overwhelming, filling her mind, filling her soul. Suddenly, a wave of energy crashed over her, and she staggered, falling to her knees. She could feel the eye's power surging through her, its presence inside her mind. The world around her blurted, and she was no longer in the temple. She was somewhere else, somewhere timeless. She saw flashes of the past ancient civilizations, long forgotten rulers, the rise and fall of empires. And she saw the eye, at the center of it all, guiding the course of history. But there was something else, something dark, something that had never been fully revealed. And the eye had not just been a tool of power. It had been a prison. Section 4. the prison of time. The visions grew clearer, more vivid. Charlotte saw the watchers, their forms twisted and unnatural, bound to the eye, their fates sealed for eternity. They were not guardians, they were prisoners, just like the civilizations they had once watched over. The eye had imprisoned them, and now it was trying to free them. "You are the final piece, Charlotte." The keeper's voice echoed through her mind. "You are the one who will unlock the full power of the eye. The cycle has always been in your hands. You will free the watchers, release the eye from its prison, and the world will return to the way it was meant to be." Charlotte's heart raced as she realized the truth. The eye wasn't just a force of power, it was a prison, and the watchers were the ones bound within it. The eye was trying to break free, and Charlotte was the key to unlocking that prison. But the cost was unimaginable. If she allowed the eye to break free, it would reshape the world, controlling not just time and space, but fate itself. And Charlotte will become part of the cycle forever. "No," she whispered. "I won't let you use me." But as she tried to resist, the power of the eye surged through her, overwhelming her thoughts, controlling her actions. The keeper was right. The eye had already claimed her. She could feel it tightening around her, pulling her toward the inevitable conclusion. Section 5. The final choice. The temple around her seemed to dissolve, replaced by an endless void. Charlotte could see the eye in the distance, glowing brightly, its power drawing her in. She could feel the watcher's presence, their cold eyes watching her every move. "You have one choice left, Charlotte." The keeper said, "Embrace the eye, free the watchers, become a part of its eternal cycle, or reject it and lose everything." Charlotte's heart raced as she looked at the eye. The power it offered was tempting, seductive, but she knew the cost. If she gave in, the world would change. It will be reshaped in the eye's image, a world where the watchers will reign supreme. She closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision. The eye called to her, but so did the voices of those she had loved, those she had fought for. She could feel their presence, urging her to resist, to break free from the eye's grip. With a final, decisive thought, Charlotte chose. She reached into the void, grasping the eye with all her strength, but instead of embracing its power, she rejected it. The world exploded in light. Chapter 10. The Echo of Time. Section 1. The Wood Reborn. Charlotte stood in the desert, the ruins of Egyptus behind her, feeling a strange weightlessness, like the world itself had been reset. The land was still, the air heavy with the scent of sand, but something deep inside she had shifted. The eye was gone. The watchers were no more. The cycle had been broken. And yet, as Charlotte gazed at the horizon, she could feel the tension in the air, like an unspoken promise, a whisper of something that hadn't yet been fully revealed. The desert stretched before her, endless and silent. There was no more immediate threat, no looming force that she could see. Yet, Charlotte felt the presence of something else, something lurking, as though the world was holding its breath. She had broken the cycle, destroyed the eye, and rejected its power. But the knowledge, the legacy of the eye, still resides within her. The visions, the whispers, the presence of the watchers, they had left an indelible mark on her soul. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't escape the feeling that something was waiting. "You did it, Doctor." Carrington's voice interrupted her thoughts. "The eye is gone. The power. The curse. It's finally ended." Charlotte turned towards him, his face pale and weary from the trials they had faced together. His eyes, however, were filled with a sense of disbelief, as if he still couldn't quite accept the reality of what had happened. "Yes," Charlotte said, but her voice lacked the conviction she wanted. "But I feel like we've only touched the surface of something bigger. Something we don't understand." Carrington furrowed his brow. "You've done more than any of us could have hoped for. The eye is gone. The watchers are gone. The cycle's over." Charlotte looked out over the desert once more, the silence pressing in on her. "I wish I could believe that," she whispered. Section 2. The Unseen Watcher. The days that followed were filled with the quiet aftermath of their journey. The excavation site had been abandoned, and the workers who had been part of the team returned home, many of them never to speak of the horrors they had witnessed again. Charlotte spent her time in the ruins, cataloging what remained of the artifacts, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. But no matter how many times she reviewed the old texts and manuscripts, no matter how many times she scoured the chamber where the eye had been, she felt an overwhelming sense of unease. The world was peaceful. Yes, but something inside she told her that peace was fragile. It was one evening, as Charlotte walked the ruins alone, that she saw a figure standing at the edge of the temple, watching her. The figure was tall, cloaked in shadow, but Charlotte knew who it was. The Watcher, but this one was different. It wasn't one of the beings she had faced before. This Watcher was human, or at least it appeared to be. His features were indistinct, his face partially obscured by a dark hood, but Charlotte could feel it, the same presence, the same power, the same eerie calm that had been present during their first encounter. "You were wrong," the Watcher said, his voice low and unsettling, though it seemed to resonate in the very air around them. "The eye is not gone. It has merely adapted. It waits for a new host." Charlotte stood still, her heart pounding in her chest. "I destroyed it. I broke the cycle. You're lying." The Watcher smiled, a cold, knowing smile. "You cannot destroy what is eternal. The eye was never an object to be destroyed. It is a force, and now it has chosen a new path." Charlotte's eyes are narrowed. "What are you saying?" "You are its new host, Charlotte," the Watcher said, his voice rising. "You have already felt its pull, the whispers in your mind. You carry its essence, its knowledge. You cannot run from what you are." Charlotte's mind raced as the Watcher's words hit her. The eye's power had never left her. She had felt it. It had been dormant. But now she understood she had not broken the cycle. She had become a part of it. "You said the cycle was over," Charlotte whispered, her voice trembling. "But this is not over." The Watcher stepped closer, his form flickering like a shadow. "It was never about the eye. It was never about control. It was about the knowledge it imparted, the understanding of time itself. You are the one chosen to bear it now. And with that power, you will change the world. Section 3. The Price of Power. Charlotte stumbled backward, her mind reeling. She had thought the power of the eye had been erased from the world, but the Watcher's words pierced through her. She could feel the energy within her, the whispers of ancient knowledge, the pull of time itself. "How do I stop this?" Charlotte asked, her voice shaking. "How do I stop the eye from taking over?" The Watcher smiled again, this time with more pity than malice. "You cannot stop it, Charlotte. The eye is part of you now. You cannot destroy it. You can only embrace it." Charlotte's thoughts spun, the weight of his words pressing in on her. How could she embrace this power? The power that had caused so much destruction, so much pain. The power that had once consumed her every thought. "I won't let it control me," she said fiercely, her voice gaining strength. "I won't become what you want me to be." The Watcher's eyes glowed with dark amusement. "You have already become it. The eye is within you. Charlotte, it will always be. The only choice you have is how you wield it." And with those words, the Watcher disappeared into the desert, leaving Charlotte alone with the terrible truth. The eye had not been destroyed. It had only changed forms. The force of time, of fate, now resides within her. Section 4. The Guardian of Time. Charlotte stood in the ruins, staring at the horizon. The Watcher was gone, but the power remained, pulsing inside her, filling her with a sense of both dread and purpose. She had thought the journey was over, but it had only just begun. The world had been shaped by the eye, and now Charlotte understood that she was the one who would carry its legacy, the power to shape time, to change the course of history. It was hers now. But the question remains, what would she do with it? As she looked down at the desert, the whispers began again. This time, they weren't just voices from the past. They were voices of the future, voices of people yet to be born. The eye's influence, the knowledge it had given her, was both a gift and a curse. And now, Charlotte had to decide if she would use it to save the world or to control it. For the first time, Charlotte truly understood the cost of the eye's power. It was not a tool. It was not an object to be used or destroyed. It was a living force, a force that shaped not only history, but destiny itself. Charlotte closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. She was no longer just an observer. She was the guardian of time. And the future was now taking shape. Chapter 11. The Guardian's Burden. Section 1. The Weight of the Future. Charlotte walked through the desolate landscape, the sands of Egypt stretching endlessly before her. The sun beat down fiercely, casting long shadows over the ruins of the temple. Although the eye's influence had faded, Charlotte couldn't shake the feeling that something far greater was unfolding, something she couldn't control. It was as if she had been marked. The eye had chosen her, and with it came a responsibility she wasn't sure she could bear. She had thought she had destroyed the artifact, broken the cycle, but now the power was within her. It was no longer an external force she could cast aside. It was embedded deeply within her very soul. Charlotte knew that her journey had only just begun. The knowledge she had gained, the power that surged through her veins was not something she could ignore. The future was now hers to shape. But the question remains, would she wield it for good, or let it consume her like it had consumed so many before? She felt the pull of the whispers once again, soft, persistent, like the distant hum of a clock ticking in the background of her mind. The eye was calling to her, urging her to embrace its power fully. But Charlotte resisted. She had to. There was no way she could return to the life she once had. The burden of the eye's power was too great, too dangerous. Section 2. The Keeper's Warning. One evening, Charlotte returned to her small, quiet apartment in London. She had been avoiding contact with anyone Carrington, the workers, even the museum. But as she sat at her desk, the weight of the eye's power pressing on her mind, she knew she couldn't ignore it anymore. There was a knock on the door. Charlotte froze. She didn't expect anyone. She stood slowly. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up as the door creaked open. In the doorway stood Victor Carrington. "Charlotte," Carrington said, his voice tinged with urgency. "We need to talk. I've been trying to reach you, but I see now you've been avoiding me." Charlotte's gaze was wary. "I don't want to be part of this anymore." "Victor? The eye? It's not what we thought it was. It's too powerful. I can't live like this." Carrington's face darkened. "I know, Charlotte. But you're not alone in this. I've been researching, too. The eye, the watchers, everything we've uncovered, it's all part of something bigger. Something we've only just begun to understand." Charlotte felt a sudden surge of fear. "What do you mean? What else is there?" Carrington stepped closer, lowering his voice. "The eye isn't just about power. It's a doorway, a bridge between worlds, between time itself. It was never meant to be destroyed. And as much as you've tried to sever the connection, the eye is still alive. And now, Charlotte, the time has come to choose." "Choose?" Charlotte repeated, her voice thick with disbelief. "What do you mean, choose?" Carrington's expression was grim. "The eye is not something that can be destroyed. It has existed for millennia, shaping time, shaping reality itself. Now that you've taken its power, you're bound to it. You are the guardian, Charlotte. You hold the key to controlling the eye. And that makes you a target. There are others who will stop at nothing to take it from you." Charlotte recoils. "Others? What are you talking about?" Carrington's eyes darkened. "There are forces that seek the eye's power. Charlotte, the Council of Time, an ancient order of powerful beings who have long sought to control the eye. They believe it can be used to reshape the fabric of time itself. They've been watching you, waiting for the moment when you would be vulnerable. And now, they'll stop at nothing to make sure they control it." Yant Satam Samasakid. Section 3. The Council of Time. Charlotte's mind racing. The Council of Time. She had never heard of such an organization, but the way Carrington spoke, she knew he wasn't lying. The threat was real. "And what does this have to do with me?" Charlotte asked, her voice strained. "I don't want any part of this. I never asked for this power." Carrington's expression softened. "I know, but you don't have a choice anymore. The eye is within you, Charlotte." the power it grants, the knowledge it contains. It's all part of the cycle. And now, you are its guardian. You can either embrace this role, accept the responsibility that comes with it, or run from it. But I promise you, running won't work. Charlotte closed her eyes, trying to absorb the magnitude of Carrington's words. The eye was no longer just an ancient artifact. It was a force of nature, a power that had shaped civilizations, and now it was inside her. How do we stop them? She asked, her voice low but determined. How do we stop the council from taking the eye from me? Carrington's eyes grew hard. We don't stop them. Not with force. Not with power. The only way to stop them is to understand the eye, to understand its purpose. You must learn to control it, to unlock the secrets it holds. Only then can we truly end this cycle. Charlotte's mind swirled. The choice before her was impossible. She had already rejected the eye once, but now it seemed like the only way to truly free herself was to face it head on, to accept the role of guardian. The burden of the eye was too great, but the consequences of ignoring it were even worse. Where do we begin? Charlotte asked quietly, her voice tinged with resignation. Carrington placed a hand on her shoulder, his gaze filled with resolution. We go to the Temple of Eternity. It's the place where the eye was created. The answers are there, Charlotte, and you're the only one who can find them. Section 4. The Temple of Eternity. Charlotte and Carrington traveled to the Temple of Eternity, an ancient site hidden deep in the desert, far from the prying eyes of the modern world. The journey was long and exhausting, but the closer they came to the temple, the more Charlotte felt the pull of the eye within her. It was as if it was calling to her, urging her to unlock its secrets. The Temple of Eternity was unlike anything Charlotte had seen before. The massive stone pillars were adorned with intricate carvings, and the walls seemed to pulse with an energy she could not fully comprehend. It was a place outside of time, a place where the past, present, and future collided. Inside, the temple was filled with ancient texts and forgotten relics, each one holding a piece of the puzzle. Charlotte spent days studying the manuscripts, trying to decipher their meaning. But the deeper she delved, the more she realized that the eye was not just a tool of power. It was a key to controlling time itself. And in the center of the temple, she found an altar, beneath which lay a second eye. The amulet she had destroyed was just one part of something much larger. The second eye was the true power, the source of everything. It was here, in the temple, that the fate of time itself would be decided. Section 5. The Choice of Guardians. Charlotte stood before the altar, her heart pounding as she gazed at the second eye. The ancient force that had consumed her life was now before her again, not in the form of an object, but in the form of a choice. Carrington stood beside her, his voice barely a whisper. This is it, Charlotte, the second eye, the source of all things, the key to the future. Charlotte felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She could either embrace the eye's power, become its master, and reshape the world in her image, or she could destroy it completely, knowing that the consequences would be far-reaching, beyond anything she could understand. With trembling hands, Charlotte reached for the second eye, and the world holds its breath. Chapter 12. The True Power of the Eye, Section 1. The Second Eye. The moment Charlotte touched the second eye, an overwhelming surge of energy coursed through her body. It was like being struck by a lightning bolt. Except this energy was not just physical. It was mental, emotional, and spiritual. It was the force of time itself. The ground beneath her trembled, and the air around her grew thick, almost tangible. The world seemed to bend, like the fabric of reality itself was warping under the pressure of the eye's power. Charlotte gasped, her mind overwhelmed by visions of events yet to unfold, of worlds that had never existed, of time unbound by the limitations of the past, present, and future. It was as though she could see everything at once: the rise and fall of civilizations, the birth of stars, the decay of life, all the threads of existence, interconnected, pulsing with the rhythm of time. But amid these overwhelming visions, one thing became painfully clear: she was not alone in this experience. The Watchers were there too. Their forms appear in the shifting shadows, their eyes locked onto her with unblinking intensity. Their presence was suffocating, almost predatory. "Do you understand now, Charlotte?" a voice whispers from the darkness. It was the same voice from the temple, the voice of the Watcher she had faced earlier. "You are part of the Eye. You have always been part of it. This is your destiny." Charlotte tried to pull her hand away from the second eye, but it was as if it had fused with her. The energy surged through her veins, and she felt herself slipping into a state of complete surrender. Time, reality, everything she had ever known began to bend to her will. Section 2. A Legacy of Time. The visions grew clearer, more vivid. Charlotte can see the faces of people who have long since passed, the faces of those who will come after her. They were all connected, bound together by the Eye, by the Watchers. The cycle had never truly ended. It had merely evolved. Charlotte was the new guardian, the new keeper of the Eye's legacy. As the images intensified, Charlotte saw herself not as she was now, but as something greater. She saw herself standing at the center of time, holding the power to shape the world, to shape history itself. She could feel the possibilities swirling around her, waiting for her infinite command. But with the power came a terrible understanding. She was not the master. She was merely the vessel. The Eye's influence, its will, was not her own. She was bound to it, to its endless, timeless grip. Charlotte felt the weight of the responsibility crushing her. The Watchers had said it before: the Eye is eternal. She had become part of it. And now, there was no escape. Section 3. The Council of Time. The room seemed to collapse into darkness, and the visions faded. Charlotte blinked and looked around. She was no longer in the temple, nor was she on the desert sands of Egypt. She was in a vast, ethereal space, an empty void, infinite and eternal. There were no walls, no boundaries, just an endless expansion of shifting shadows and light. And there, standing before her, were the Council of Time, the beings Carrington had warned her about. They were the true power behind the eye, the ancient order that had existed for millennia. And they had been watching her from the moment she touched the eye. The leader of the council, a tall figure cloaked in shadow, stepped forward. His eyes gleamed like stars, and his voice resonated with the weight of eternity. "You are the one," the figure said, his voice both cold and familiar. "The eye has chosen you, Charlotte Ellis. You are the guardian of time now." Of Charlotte's heart raced as she realized the magnitude of her position. "I didn't choose this," she said, her voice trembling. "I never wanted this power. I only wanted to stop the eye." The leader of the council smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "The eye does not allow for choice. It is the force that binds all things. You can resist it, but it will always find its way back. The eye chose you because you are the one who can understand its true power. You, Charlotte, are not just a keeper. You are the key to its ultimate purpose." "What do you mean?" Charlotte asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. The leader's eyes glowed brighter. "The eye is a tool of creation and destruction. It is the force that governs time itself. And now, as its guardian, you will guide its power to shape the future of the world, to decide the fate of time itself." Section 4. The Price of Power. The words of the leader echoed in Charlotte's mind as the council surrounded her, their presence towering over her like an insurmountable force. The power of the eye was now fully within her, but it was not hers to wield freely. She was bound to it, just as the watchers had been. She felt the weight of that power pressing down on her. And the realization hit her like a wave. "You must understand, Charlotte," the leader continued, his voice soft but forceful. "The eye cannot be destroyed. It is part of the natural order. It is what binds time together, what controls the flow of existence. But now, you hold the power to reshape it, to redefine its path. The future of the world rests in your hands." Charlotte shook her head, her heart filled with dread. "I don't want this power. I don't want to control time." The leader's gaze softened, but his expression remained unwavering. "You have no choice. You are the guardian of time now. To resist is to break the fabric of reality itself." Charlotte looked around at the faces of the council. Their cold, detached expressions stared back at her. They were not human. They were ancient beings, timeless, unfeeling. They had lived through countless eras, watching civilizations rise and fall, manipulating time to their will. "You are no longer part of the world you once knew," the leader said. "You are now part of the eternal cycle, and you will serve the eye as its chosen vessel, just as the watchers did before you." Charlotte took a deep breath, her hands trembling. The weight of the decision before her was unbearable. She could feel the power coursing through her, threatening to consume her, to pull her into the endless present of time. But she couldn't fight it. She couldn't break free. She was bound to the eye. And the cycle will continue. Section 5. The Decision. In the depths of her soul, Charlotte knew what had to be done. She had to make a choice. The eye had given her the power to reshape reality, to control time. But that power came at a cost. The watchers had been enslaved by it, and now she stood on the precipice of the same fate. But there was one thing: the eye had never accounted for Charlotte's will. She had fought against the eye before, and though it had tried to claim her, she had resisted. She had the power to shape the future, but it was not the eye that would define her. It was her choice. The leader of the council watched her, his expression unreadable. "The time has come, Charlotte. Will you embrace your destiny and wield the power of the eye? Or will you let it consume you, as it has consumed others?" Charlotte closed her eyes, drawing in a deep breath. The decision was hers, and hers alone. With a final, resolute movement, Charlotte made her choice. "I will not let the eye control me," she said firmly. "I will rewrite the cycle." Chapter 13. The Rewriting of Time, Section 1. Breaking the Cycle. Charlotte stood at the center of the Temple of Eternity, her hand gripping the second eye with an intensity that matched the pounding of her heart. The Watchers, the Council of Time, they all surround her, their presence like a shadow that envelops her very being. The power within her surged, threatening to overtake her, but Charlotte's resolve remained firm. This time, she will not be controlled. "I will not be your puppet," she whispered through gritted teeth, her voice filled with a quiet fury. "I will not rewrite time according to your will." Foyard, the leader of the council, watched her silently, his expression unreadable. "You may resist, but the eye has already claimed you. You are its guardian. You were always meant to wield its power." Charlotte closed her eyes for a brief moment, feeling the weight of the centuries pressing down on her. She had seen time unfold in all its beauty and chaoses, but she knew that to control it would be to condemn herself to become another watcher, bound forever to the eye's eternal cycles. "I am not your instrument," she said, her voice stronger now, "and I will not serve you. Not anymore." The air around her grew still, and for a moment, everything seemed to pause. The council's presence, once overpowering, seemed to fade into the background. It was as if Charlotte had stepped outside of time, as though the very fabric of reality had bent to her will. She turned her gaze to the second eye, still glowing faintly before her. It was not a mere object of power. It was the essence of time itself, a force that shaped the universe. And Charlotte now understands the truth. It was not the eye that had control over her. It was her choice that mattered. With a deep breath, Charlotte releases the eye's power, not by destroying it, but by redirecting it. Her hand, trembling slightly, reached toward the altar, and she closed her eyes, letting the energy flow through her. She wasn't resisting it. She was transforming it, channeling it into a new form. The ground shook beneath her feet as the power of the eye responded to her will. The watchers recoil, their forms flickering as the energy shifted. The very fabric of the temple began to warp, the walls trembling as time itself seemed to bend and fracture. "No," the leader of the council roared, his voice filled with panic. "You cannot do this. You cannot reshape the flow of time. The eye is eternal. You are its servant." Charlotte's eyes flared with determination as the power surged within her. "No," she said, her voice clear and unyielding. "I will not be your servant. I will shape time, not with control, but with freedom. Section 2. The Convergence of Realities. As Charlotte poured every ounce of her will into the eye, she felt time itself unraveling. The ancient force that had once bound reality began to shift. The walls of the temple melted away, and Charlotte was no longer in the physical world. Instead, she stood on the precipice of something far greater, the boundary between all that was, all that is, and all that could be. The watchers' voices filled her mind, their desperate cries to return to the cycle. The council's power flickered like a dying flame, but it was not enough to hold her back. Charlotte had become more than a guardian. She had become the creator of her own fate. She could see every possibility laid out before her, each thread of time intertwining like the strands of a vast, infinite web. It was overwhelming, but it was also beautiful. The power to shape history, to change the future, lies within her hands. But she knew this power came with a cost. You have the power to remake the world. Charlotte, the leader of the council, said, his voice soft but laden with a chilling finality. But at what price? The eye binds all things together. Without it, without the cycle, chaos will reign, time will fracture, reality will collapse. Charlotte looked at him, her expression unwavering. I will not let the past bind me. I will rewrite time, not as a prisoner, but as a free being. With a final surge of energy, Charlotte reached out and tore the fabric of reality itself. The power of the eye explodes outward in a brilliant flash of light. Time fractured, and for a moment, everything went still. Section 3. The Dawn of a New Era. When the light faded, Charlotte found herself standing once more in the ruins of the Temple of Eternity. The ground was no longer shaking. The temple, once a place of dark power, now stands in quiet ruins, its significance erased from time itself. The eye was no longer there. Its influence dissipated into the ether. Charlotte took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the choice she had made. The watchers were gone. The council had been silenced, and the cycle of time had been shattered. It was no longer about control. It was about freedom, her freedom. The world around her began to shift, not violently, but gently, like a landscape evolving into something new. The sands of Egypt seemed to breathe, the air around her thick with possibility. Charlotte felt the pulse of the universe, but now it was different. It was no longer the cold, oppressive grip of the eye. It was her own will, her own creation, shaping the world in ways she had never imagined. And then, for the first time, Charlotte truly felt the weight of time lift from her shoulders. She was free. Section 4. A New Beginning. As Charlotte walked away from the temple, the horizon before she seemed to stretch into infinity. The past was gone, and the future was no longer determined by the cycle of the eye. She had shaped time, bent it to her will, and now the world was her canvas. There was no going back. No more watchers. No more council of time. The eye was gone, and its influence was no longer a part of her. But the power, she now held the ability to shape history, to change the course of events, was a burden she had to bear. It wasn't a gift. It was a responsibility. The whispers of the past, the voices of those who had sought the eye before her, had faded. Charlotte was alone, standing at the edge of a new world, a world she had created. And yet, as she looked out over the horizon, she knew that this was only the beginning. The eye had been part of her story, but it was no longer her master. The future was hers to shape. Epilogue: the cycle of choices. Years passed, and Charlotte continued her journey, one that would take her through the ages. She wandered the earth, guiding the course of history, shaping the future with the power she had embraced. But she never forgot the lesson she had learned, that the power to shape time was not a gift, but a burden. She saw the rise of civilizations, the fall of empires, the twists and turns of fate that shaped the world. She helped guide those who sought to change the future, just as she once had. But she knew that each decision came with consequences, that every choice, every action, rippled through the fabric of time, creating a new reality. In the quiet moments, Charlotte will reflect on the path she had taken, the choices she had made. And though the eye was no longer with her, she knew that the cycle of time would never truly end. It was not the eye that shaped the world, it was the choices made by those who wielded its power. And Charlotte Ellis, the guardian of time, had chosen to be free.